Hey, what's good? What's good? It's your boy Nova Z the ENT tapping in with another video from the young bull, Scion of Culture. He's gonna do a little video on why aren't there any more games inspired by African history, culture, and mythologies, right? So I've got my own hypothesis. Um, something that I've been thinking about with this discourse that I'm glad to be a part of, right? That I've kind of created with my small little channel here the last couple days is, one of the trickiest things about being an American black person, right, is the lack of mythology in um our own stories and things of that nature, right? That kind of is what happens, when history stripped from you, things of that, how that goes. Um, I'm not well versed myself in any. I know a couple of Risha, you know, but that's a small area of Africa itself. Africa's a giant continent, a lot of lore. Tribes have their own gods and their own religions and things of that nature. I'm not well versed in it, right? So one of the things that I need to start doing, and I'll probably do it on in videos, and so you can learn with me, right? Is we've got to put our money where our mouth is. That's the hypothesis. That's the thought I want to put out before we even start that, right? If it's important for us to be represented, we have to have a basis of representation, right? I know somebody's like, oh, I'm tired of this nigga talking about the same shit. Get used to it, right? I'm definitely sprinkling some stuff in there, but I am passionate about what I'm passionate about, and I'm never going to stop talking about things that I enjoy. They're not always going to be on topics like this, right? I just did a high guard video a little bit ago, right? Um, but I am passionate about this. But I think we've got to be able to put our money where our mouth is, right? Whether it be your ability to affect change or your knowledge of things that can affect change. And I think that I have to do a better job personally of knowing what, like, I'm a consumer. I'm an American. I consume as much as the next man, right? If I can't tell, let's say somebody came up to me right now and said, hey, I'm interested in creating something with African mythos, right? Like Tales of Kinzera Zao. I'll say it every day. I'll keep saying it. Love the idea, love the lore, love the game. It sucks the studio didn't survive, and if they come back again, I'll throw more money at them. Doesn't bother me, right? What would you like to see, Nova? And I'll say, I don't know. I don't know shit about shit, right? I mean, I'm just a boy from the east side. I can't tell you nothing that's going on in the world beside what I got in the nap, right? And I think I need to do a better job of expanding my horizons, right? We've got supercomputers in front of us in our hands, and we can all do a better job of that, right? So go ahead, Sion, take it away. Take me into your headspace.
Back to another video. I have something interesting I wanted to talk about regarding gaming. It was actually inspired by a tweet I saw, but I already held this sentiment for a while now. For some of you who may not know this about me, I like to play video games from time to time. I see it as a great recreational activity to partake in my free time. Aside from being a hobby, video games can also be a great medium that I feel like a lot of people tend to severely underestimate. One of the areas I feel like video games excel in is being an interactive experience. Unlike movies and books, where you just witness what's being told to you, video games offer an active participation in the experience of the world that is being created, allowing players to influence stories through choices and actions in certain games, creating a more personal narrative than a movie's passive viewing experience. Video games provide a much deeper immersion through longer playtime and interactivity, building stronger emotional connections with characters by having the player embody them and experience the world from their perspective. Now you might be wondering why I am talking about video games, right? Well, it relates to something I have been wanting to see for a long time and disappointingly has yet to fully manifest in the way that I want, and that is more games based on African history, culture, and mythologies. This is an area that is severely lacking right now in the gaming industry, in my opinion. If you've played enough video games, you'd know that the majority of games are usually inspired by European culture and mythology, or Japanese culture and mythology. It's not that surprising, to be fair, as most gaming studios are dominated by the West and Japan. However, that's slowly changing with China and other Southeast Asian countries joining the market with their own games.
Hey, if anybody could help me out, right? I could look it up myself, right? But maybe it's a way to create a engagement, right? I live in the West. Where I live is called the West, right? Australia here, the UK, the East is Asia, you know, um, South Asia, uh, Arab states. I think Russia is considered the East. What is the what is Africa, right? Like, I'm assuming East and West is based on culture and ideology, but I don't have any. What do they call that now, right? Like, I know back in the day they called it the dark continent. Have they moved on past that? Have we figured out something, an alignment for, for what goes on over there? Just something I'm thinking of, right? Like, I'm sure Mexico, Canada, considered the West. Are there any South American countries that are considered not Western? Anybody help me out with that, right?
Heavily inspired by their own respective cultures, which is great as it adds more diverse experience in the gaming pool and even exposes us to cultures we may not usually associate ourselves with. They offer hidden perks that people often don't think about, and that is soft power. Yeah, that's right, I'm going there. For those of you who may not know, soft power is a nation's ability to influence other countries through attraction and persuasion, rather than coercion, by leveraging its appealing culture, political values, and foreign policies that others admire and want to emulate. It's about getting others to want what you want, achieved through cultural exports such as movies, music, and in this case, video games, fostering goodwill and long-term alliances. What I'm focusing on is how video games can help promote African cultures to strengthen the perception of ourselves in the world. If you try to find a game that either has a black protagonist or a game where the world is clearly and unapologetically inspired by any African culture, you would be hard pressed to find any. And I am not even talking about AAA games either. Even in the realms of indie games, which are video games created by individuals or small teams, independent of large publishers, it will be difficult to find any that are of high quality. So why is that? Why don't we see many games based on African cultures, history, or mythos? I think there are a few reasons why that is. The first and obvious one is funding. The reason why we don't see many games based on African culture or history is due to a lack of funding, as people in the Western industry, for example, focus on familiar markets that lead to profit, leading to poor representation and limited local resources for development. And if a game can acquire funding, oftentimes they may have to water down what they've initially created to appeal to a certain wider demographic. Many people are used to seeing games based on European and Japanese culture, so those
Now, the thing I do have to say about that is, remember in my video, the last one the react section I did between Lootbox and Scion, funding to me doesn't necessarily matter if the niche audience that you are trying to garner. Okay, I'm gonna give you the best one. I'm gonna tie it into the video I made about that there are some people, and I gave you the example, right? I made a video of he got joy of seeing studio a plan fail that would give something to a community he's not a part of, right? They funded that in 90 minutes. They were just the wrong people to execute that plan. So the money's there, right? The vision is there. There are people who want to see that, right? I don't necessarily think funding may be the problem. It's focus, like focus for the funding. Like, if I'm gonna give you, I just thought of this right now as I'm thinking about this, right? The three easiest indie access points I think you could get for this, right? I'm gonna give you the first one right now. I guarantee you, everybody and their mama want to play this. Muso style title, right? Let's go. I'm of Nigerian descent, so I'll make that. I'll go with that, right? If you did some Yoruba, like Yoruba history, or Igbo or Igbo history, um, and made a Muso game based upon, even if you take, like the Yellow Turbo, like the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, that Dynasty Wars is based off of, and then the feudal states period that Samurai Wars is based off of. Do some embellishment. Get history as close as you can, but make it presentable. You could do a Muso style game with that. Easy, right? Tribes fighting tribes. Sometimes you're on this side, sometimes you're on that side. You can get an 18 game series out of that. Niggas will play it every day. I'll play it right now. I'll fund it right now. Tell us exactly how much it'll cost. We'll fund it. And then if you need a little bit more money, tell us that. Drop some betas here and there to keep us happy. You got a free 3 years worth of funding. You got a job. Get you a small team. Make it happen. Put it on YouTube, like, all your updates and stuff like that. Make us feel a part of it. Make us parasocial. You got it. Number two, a Hades style roguelike. I can never know if it's roguelike or roguelite. If you know the distinction between the two, help me out. Drop it in the comments, right? Um, that would, based on, like I said, Yoruba stuff like Hades, you could literally just do Hades, but with the Orisha, right? Like Ogun and things of that nature. That and Shango, that would work perfectly. You would get it wouldn't take a ton of money. I mean, it'd still take a good amount of money, right? But there are people right now who could make that given a year or so with some funding. You could put that out, sell it for $10, whatever, what have you. Obviously, backers get it for free because we already covered the cost, or have them throw a couple more rule whatever, right? Then three would be a fighting game. Niggas love fighting games. I don't know what it is about it. I'm sure that there's some racist out there right now who would tell me why I love fighting games, but I do love scraps, right? So if you made a Mortal Kombat or Bloody Roar, if you really want to get with it, you know what I'm saying? A Bloody Roar style fighting game where you turn into different spirits. Look at me. I'm spitballing right now. Somebody send me money. I'll go get the team together. I'll do the research. Put $100,000 in my account right now. I'll make it happen for us, right? A Bloody Roar style fighting game based upon African mythology, selling out right now, right? You can do the whole verse. You can make it all. You can make it flow in and out, right? Hyrule Warriors, the Legend of Zelda series, Smash Brothers. You've got the entire system right there. Look at me. I just spitballed it right now in a couple of minutes. I can make it happen. Somebody hire me.
That stray away from the norm are not always eagerly received. It's uncharted territory after all. So if you're building or creating a game in the West as an unknown indie studio, it's virtually impossible to get funding for something that is not the norm or is untested territory. And when you factor in that there are more predominantly white video game studios out there in the industry, the statistical likelihood of seeing a game based on or inspired by European or even sometimes Japanese cultures is far higher. And if we're talking about a well-established gaming studio with large funding who are also still predominantly white-owned, then it's a different matter. As with those big funded studios, they are more comfortable with creating what they're more familiar with, or more importantly, what they are more interested in and will guarantee a return on investment. This is actually a cycle here that people don't see. The people who go out and create games are inspired by the games they played growing up, and as such, influence the games they create today. And as I mentioned before, most games.
Now, I mean, he showed already a couple of clips in that make me not agree with that assessment. Kojima loves making games with white people in it, right? He's Japanese. He loves making games that have white guys in it, right, and white girls. Ghost of Tsushima is made by a Western studio. The amount of people, Legend of Zelda, things of that nature. The Japanese studios absolutely love making European style games. It's about what you know and what you can learn. I am agreeing with this point where it says like it's what they saw when they were kids, right? But we've accelerated our ability to gain knowledge so much that you can make a game based upon. You could fund this. Um, it won't be as organic. I get that point, and I'm agreeing with them. People didn't play African games growing up, so there has to be a wave of people who start African games. Like Black Panther is going to be in the zeitgeist forever. It had to start, right? It had to begin so it can continue, and you know there will be a group who makes games based in African folklore. It just has to be a studio that hits a lick and continues it. But I don't agree with the point that other people can't make those games well because we're already seeing it happen.
Are heavily European inspired, so naturally, that would lead to more European inspired games being made by those who grew up on it. And of course, when you look towards the East, it's the same thing. Sometimes you'll see crossover of cultural exchanges, Western studios creating games based on Japanese cultures,
okay.
and vice versa. Japanese game studios creating games based on European culture. Both sides are feeding into each other's soft power and fostering a level of respect and admiration for each other's cultures. Now you might be thinking to yourself right now, well, we live in a time where indie games can be made without huge funding in the West. As long as you have a computer and time, you can create anything you want. So why aren't black people in the West creating their own games? Simple answer, they are. It's just not what I want to see. Let me explain. Black people who are born and raised in the West are actually more likely to create games based on the culture they grew up in or consumed. A Black American, for example, is more likely to either create a game based on their own cultural Black American experience or based on their favorite genre they grew up playing. From their perspective, having a black character alone is sufficient to them because they just want to see themselves in a particular setting they like. The truth is, not all black Americans, staying on this example, will have an interest in the African setting. They weren't exposed to it enough to desire it, in my opinion. They are more likely to envision themselves in the European or Asian cultural setting, which they were more exposed to while playing. And the same can be said about black Europeans. Now, it's not all black people in the West, but as you can imagine, that already reduces the pool of potential studios owned by black people that could spawn in the West, creating games based in African settings. So, the simple reason why you don't see games based on African culture is that the established gaming scene in the West and East has no interest in doing so. The gaming industry has existed for more than 70 years, and in that time period, with millions of games having been published since, yet you would be struggling to create a list of 100 high-quality games based, influenced, or inspired by African culture, history, and mythos. And I am being generous with that number. Realistically, you wouldn't even be able to do 20 high-quality games list. And no, mobile games don't count in my opinion. Of course, the next logical step would be to look toward the giant continent filled with millions of black people and ask, how come we don't see many gaming studios emerge in Africa? Well, although we are seeing more gaming studios popping up, the reality is that the gaming industry in Africa struggles with high costs, inconsistent power, internet, lack of high investments from within, and other issues holding it back. Yes, you may have heard that the gaming industry is growing on the continent, but the majority of that is mobile gaming. And it's not even the high quality kind of mobile gaming you see come from China, for example. It's mobile games you'd expect your auntie playing. Africa's games industry is growing rapidly, sure, but the expansion is primarily fueled by mobile, which makes up nearly 90%.
Yeah, okay, sure. Like I'm not saying anything against it because he did say like games that he wants to see, right? But things that are in their infancy, you can't hold them to the same standard that you would things that have had time to grow and they've had that infrastructure, right? Like I get what he's saying. Like we want to see epics, we want to see Black Myth Wukong, but with black people. You get what I'm saying? Like I completely understand that, right? But if we're think about it. Like if you can name high-powered African countries right now, and I'm just saying this as an American, right? You got Nigeria, South Africa, Botswana, Egypt, Morocco, Kenya, Ethiopia, maybe Benin, and in Ghana, right? Um, yeah, obviously, there's probably more, but those are the ones I can name off the top of my head. Even then, a lot of those countries are very young, so they're not even in the headspace of where, like, if they're developing for mobile, they have cell phones, right? Like you said, unreliable internet, like Wi-Fi and things of that nature. I know I follow a YouTuber, a Nigerian YouTuber, and he said the hardest thing about being Nigerian and traveling as much as he does is to see how good the infrastructure is. Like he said, he made a video recently where he came to Atlanta, and he's just he said like it's crazy to be around people who look like me, and I'll describe an experience I have every day as a grown adult. Like he said, like you have to pay for generators and you have to swipe your card to pay for generator time because when they turn off the power in the city, you'll get priority to get turned back on, or they'll give you just some extra. And Americans are like, what are you talking about, bro? Like if the power go out here, we fighting somebody. Like where it's a scrap. But he's just like, man, that's crazy to me because that's just regular, common, everyday stuff to hear, and it's hard to get used to. They have other concerns other than developing anything other than mobile games that can make a quick dollar, right? That it's cultural. You have to give them time to get in the headspace where we are. I hate to say it, it's easier for diaspora people to develop that here, but because we can take the time to go and do the research to catch up and maybe inspire them to be able to move this way. You don't have to, but I'm saying it would be easier, right?
90% of the market due to high smartphone accessibility and affordability. Unfortunately, this is where we're at right now when it comes to the continent. It's also fair to say that gaming on consoles is not a huge market in various African countries, except for South Africa. The truth is, there's not enough true, meaningful investment in the gaming scene being made by the government or other parties in the various countries. It hasn't nurtured a culture for gaming innovation, and because of this, they'll continue to fall behind. And to be fair, while the gaming industry was beginning to develop in the West and East, the continent of Africa was recovering from the damage of colonialism. The truth is, gaming is a first world hobby, and a luxury one at that, so it's not surprising that there hasn't been any studio popping up in Africa. With all that being said, let's wrap up the video with me sharing with you all the types of games I would like to see one day be made. So, for me as a gamer, the types of games I tend to gravitate to are role-playing games, story-driven games, action-adventure games, MMOs, and open-world games. Let's start with a story-driven game. In this sense, when it comes to a game based on African history, I'm thinking more in lines of Ghost of Tsushima or Yotei type of game. I would love to see a game similar to this, but set maybe in West Africa during the Songhai period or any period where there was conflict and a political Game of Thrones. A game based on the Songhai Empire during their expansion would go crazy. Seeing any African historical setting with that kind of graphic fidelity and
Future me watching this video, look up the Songhai Empire and figure out what that is. Because, looking at these little screenshots, definitely looks like something I would play. And actually may be perfect for that Muso style game that I just mentioned earlier.
experiencing the event unfold as a narrative as we play with our made-up character would be wonderful. For role-playing games, I am particularly fond of JRPG's art style specifically. I've always
By the way, I know that this is going to be some pedantic, liberal nonsense I'm about to say, right? But we got to stop calling them JRPGs, right? When Japanese people say like, "Why are you calling them that?" Like, yes, we're not the only people who make turn-based RPGs. We may have made them, right? But you don't consider, uh, you know, we don't say Skyrim is an American RPG, right? Why is we have different types of games. We have open world games, we have turn-based style games, we have action RPG, stuff of that nature. Just don't call turn-based RPGs made in Japan JRPGs, right? And I get that that's being pedantic, like because you kind of know we're not saying the J doesn't even stand for Japanese. It's just indicative of the turn-based game we're going to see, right? Like, so I do get that, but in an effort to be more like because if somebody I don't want somebody to call I have nicknames from when I was a kid. I'm 40 years old. I don't want to be called my childhood nickname, right? There are people I allow to call me my childhood nickname because they're my elders. They've been calling me that for my entire life. But when somebody new finds out what my childhood nickname is, I mean, you can't do that. You can't call me that. That's a privilege I give to them because they've deserved that honor at this point. You feel what I'm saying? So I'm just throwing it out there, just being a liberal on that.
love the Final Fantasy aesthetic, so imagine entering a new and fantastical world with architecture and cultural magical weapons inspired by any African culture of your choice. Not only would it be awesome to see African architecture and characters in a Final Fantasy style, but it would also be cool to see the unique monsters that would be inspired by various African mythos. This applies to any fantasy-based game, to be fair. Heck, I don't even play farming simulators, but having one where you take care of a farm and every crop is inspired by the ones you would find in Africa would be neat too. I know a lot of people would eat that up. For MMO, honestly, just give me what Guild Wars 1 did with Guild Wars Nightfall, where each region is literally inspired by every geographical location of the African continent. I was pleasantly surprised when I picked up the remaster and picked Nightfall as my starting faction. It's the closest I'll get to seeing what a story campaign inspired by Africa would be like. I would also include any entire MMO based on something like League of Legends Shurima aesthetic. I love the world of Shurima, and it's my favorite region in the League of Legends world. An MMO is coming based on the League of Legends brand, so that's another opportunity to see African culture come to life in AAA fashion. Of course, I would take a very polished pixel art game too. Any game that's like Octopath Traveler in quality but is based in Yoruba.
Man, I'm glad he said that. A pixel art Octopath Traveler style game set I'm gonna go ahead and say like East Africa, right? Like we say a lot about West Africa and obviously North Africa because you get Egypt and Morocco and stuff like that. It already has an aesthetic, but set that in East Africa so we can get a little bit more uh, of an eyeball on that culture, all those cultures and things of that nature. Man, I'd eat that right now. You got $60 coming to you right now. I'll pre-order that right now.
Yoruba or Nubian culture and aesthetic would be amazing. You get the point. I am hungry for a game, a high quality game based on Africa. The only example I can think of is Assassin's Creed Origins, and I am mentioned for two reasons. One, it did the history justice, and two, the ancient Egyptians were not whitewashed in the slightest. That last part is very important as people have a nasty habit of whitewashing ancient Egyptians in fiction, especially in games. But that's a topic for another day. Anyways, I think I've dragged out the video long enough. Let me know what you guys think, and also share with me what genre and art style would like to see an African game based around. Be sure to like the video, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time.
So I'm gonna go ahead. on my own time, leave a comment with what I said earlier on his video. Make sure I patronize him as best I can, for using his video to give me some ideas. But man, I like what he said on this one, man. I'm not saying I wasn't. I'm not saying pleasantly surprised, but I do think that this was a very well thought out video. Um, and he actually said like this is the things that I would like to see instead of just saying could somebody do something, and it kind of inspired me to think a little bit, right? One of the things that I will say, man, I'm not, I'm gonna be completely honest with you. All of this thinking, like looking over the Into the Motherland's failed project, it's not, it's still in the ether, right? They haven't necessarily failed, they just haven't produced it yet. um, the comments that people had with my other video saying like I don't mind if black people are in it, they just have to justify their presence there. uh, I gotta do something, right? Like I promise, like once I get monetized, because I can do conceptual stuff right now. Like I'll start thinking about it right now, start trying to visualize what it is. But once I have bread beside the bread that takes care of my family, right? I'm gonna try to make something happen, man. I don't know necessarily what it is. Like even if I can get the bread enough to pay some people to make a pixel art version of a game, um, that speaks to what I'm talking about, even if it's ass, right? At least I did something, right? Maybe it might inspire somebody, as this young man has inspired me to even think about it, right? And I hope that maybe somebody out there is inspired to do a little bit themselves, right? Maybe we can come together and and inspire each other to be able to kind of reach each one, teach one. You know what I'm saying? But hey, if you could like, subscribe, hit that bell, join the Zetaverse, and help us on the road to 100. I gained 3 subscribers, 2 subscribers since the last time I made a video, and I'm pretty proud about that. I just want y'all to know y'all inspire me to do this every day after I get off my long ass 12-hour days. Um, and it's just, I'm just glad to be able to have a hobby that may be able to turn into something better, right? Feel free to be parasocial. Yeah, y'all gonna grow with me, right? If we're 1,000 subscribers in this time next year, yes, we're 1,000 subscribers in next year. So hey, like, subscribe. I'm gonna put a link to another video right here, and thanks for joining me. Have a great day. One.